Hi, you're listening to Thoughtful Wellness Revolution, where we believe wellness isn't wellness if it's just for you. We're your hosts, Zara and Hien. And before we get started, please make sure to give us a 5-star rating and review. Even though we're a podcast that believes in decolonizing, we're still bound to the algorithm. So every little bit that you can help us out, we really appreciate it. And we thank you for all the support. Let's get into it. Hey friends, we are coming to you with our first episode of the season, and we're switching up the way we start our podcast off a bit. And Hien and I are gonna just check in with each other, give you a vibe of the interview, let you listen to that, and then you'll hear our thoughts at the end. So, since this is a new season and a new episode, Hien, and a new year, this is our first recording of the year. You guys won't hear this till March. It will be around March, April when you're listening to this, hopefully. But Hien, what's on your mind today?
I think for me, what has been on my mind today is mornings. And that is because I woke up early this morning. And you know me, Zara, I am not an early bird, right? I was going to say morning bird, an early bird. I'm a night owl, but I woke up early this morning and I've been having a pretty good day so far. So I don't know, maybe there's something to it. Yeah.
I love that. As you know, and many people in my life know, I'm an early riser. This past year's been a bit different for me on that front, but I'm trying to get back to it. I love an early morning. You feel like you get a lot done. By noon, you're like, oh my gosh, I've already had a full day. That's so great.
What's on your mind, Zara?
There's a lot on my mind. What a lot of people wouldn't know if I wasn't about to tell everyone is I definitely had a full breakdown and sobbed to the end before we started this. But I am feeling pretty fresh and clear now. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but yeah, so I'm thinking a bit about how it's really beautiful that when our sadness can be witnessed by another person, it almost like heals it, or it like really does put some like softness and some ease into the moving through of it. And I just want to say, for anyone who isolates when they are sad, if you look at yourself being sad, if you talk to someone else and you're honest about it, that helps. You know, if you don't have anyone to talk to, I get it. I've been there. But look in the mirror. It feels fucking weird as hell, but it does work. And then you can laugh a bit and that feels awkward too.
You know, I just want to say, I'm going to talk to you more about this later, Zara, but it's so interesting you said that because, so I have a cousin and she's one of the happiest person I know. She's an Enneagram 7. I'll just also put that out there. And I've noticed that is how she deals with life and the shit that happens in her life is she will talk to people. And I also have heard like, you know, in the world of like psychology and like scientifically that it is helpful if you've gone through trauma or just like when you're going through hard times, if you're able to verbalize it, because it really does something and it helps. And so I just kind of like want to point that out because it just feels like, I don't know, feels very aligned with what I want to tell you about my cousin who I love later.
I love that. That's absolutely beautiful. Yeah. And speaking of, I don't know if we're speaking of trauma, we're talking around trauma and like processing and stuff, but we did have just the most beautiful conversation with SexySoupDumplings that you guys are about to hear. And to give you a little like idea on the vibe of that, if any of you have seen the new movie The Menu, with Ralph Fiennes, Tony from Skins, that's gonna be my millennial olders crowd who watched UK Skins. Sorry, it's not about the cast. It's not about the cast. We don't talk about the cast in the episode. Anyway, so we talk about the menu. We start off talking about the menu, and it really gets us into a beautiful conversation surrounding sexuality, food, sex work. Interestingly enough, like labor rights and how people are, people in those industries kind of experience that. And we get a lot into SexySoupDumplings work and their experience, and it is a really beautiful episode. Hien, is there anything you want to add before these beautiful people get started?
I will say that Sexy Soup Dumplings is a very Taurus person, umbrella Taurus energy and sensuality. And that's one of the things I love about them. And I hope that you enjoy it as well in the episode and the interview.
Hello, friends. Today we're talking to Sexy Soup Dumplings, who is a chef, content creator, and sex worker from Philly. So, can you tell us what's on your mind today?
So, okay, has anyone seen the menu yet? Have y'all seen the menu?
Yes. Oh, it's so
I have
good
so
and
many
creepy.
thoughts. I had a very short hosting stint in fine dining, and it was the worst experience of my life, and I did not get paid enough. And I just think the connection between food work and sex work is like so evident in that movie, especially fine dining. Like, I have so many thoughts on fine dining and like the whole like pedestaling of fine dining. Yeah.
Okay, I absolutely love that. And I'm so curious. I have to ask you more off because this is not an interview about the menu. But yes, oh my God, that is so interesting. I worked not in fine dining, but in service. So I can attest that it is not ideal. You're not always treated with dignity and respect. So yeah, those are some very interesting points I hadn't thought of. So can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do or create?
So I am a self-taught chef. I've been working at a mutual aid collective kitchen, which is a very like horizontal environment compared to like what you see in the menu, which is like, you know, the old like French way of doing things where they like yell at people. Like, no, that's not the environment that I work in, and I'm very grateful for that. And I also do a lot of content creation, both around food, pleasure, and as well as non-monogamy, because I am a non-monogamous person, well, specifically polyamorous, if we want to be more exact. And I do sex work mainly online, but I'm rolling out the in-person sex work, which is really, really exciting, because I love to create healing spaces, and I feel like that's accessible through food, but also through sex work. Even though like I know that sex work's definitely defined by like a lot of people, but I feel like it's super taboo if you talk about it in the Asian communities, because like A, we don't really talk about sex, and B, like I don't think anyone's mom is like, oh my God, my like child is selling their body. I'm like, but the world exploits us in so many other ways. That's just like one way that you're not necessarily, well, I mean, yeah, there can be exploitation if we're going to get more nuance, but also like it can be empowering. And to me, as like someone who is polyamorous, who is a survivor of intimate and sexual violence, intimate partner violence, like it's something empowering, because like it's taken back all those experiences for me. But also that's just my experience. That's not everyone's experience. I want to put that out there.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. Like, thank you for like sharing it from, you know, your lens and about your point of view and your experience. And, you know, that is why we're having you on here, is because I just want to like share with folks how I kind of like know you. And so from what I just remember, I think we started like, I guess, becoming like Instagram friends or mutuals in like, I want to say like 2019-ish, like that feels like forever ago. And I just remember that you just seemed like a really cool person. Like you were just putting out content that felt so honest and like vulnerable, and just also like so bold. Like it was just really cool to see an Asian person who's just so bold online with like, this is my life, this is what I'm going through. And you've shared like sort of both, I think, your ups and downs in life since then. That's like what I've seen and what I really admire. And so, you know, you're talking about being like a chef and content creator and sex worker. I just want to say all those things are very like sensual, and like I know you're a Taurus, and so I just want to say that's like big Taurus energy,
That's very
which I
Taurus
love.
energy.
Which I love. I'm like, yes, like give me that like sensual, you know, energy, you know, like teach me. So I really love that. And I remember, you know, not that long ago, really, it really was not that long ago. You were very vocal about your thoughts on the coaching industry, because I think you were starting, as a content creator along with coaching. And if you're comfortable with it, and you know, like you can talk about it to however much extent you want. I'd love to kind of hear how you went from that of thinking like, I'm going to be a coach to like, and this is what I do now as a chef, content creator, and sex worker, and kind of like the journey. Because I've like, you know, as someone who follows you, like I've seen it, and I think it's really interesting. And I'd love to hear it from you in your words.
So I guess with like starting in the coaching industry, it was something that like during 2020, I feel like it was like the advent of like coaching before everything kind of like unpeeled itself, which makes sense astrologically because like I'm one of those people who's very witchy too. So I do include that in my sex work and my food. But I got interested in it because I've always been interested in being my own boss. Like that to me is very empowering. Not in like the girl boss way, like, no, I get to like charge my rates, whatever. And I think that it's easy to get sucked into it, especially when like 2019, 2020, I was still very early in my healing journey with survivorship, with intimate partner violence, with abuse, with sexual violence. And I think it makes you very gullible to things that seem right, quote unquote. I think that it also was like, for me, externalizing my validation when in reality, like that's nice to have, but like it's not a need. And it felt like kind of an addiction to that in some ways now that I look back. And I think it was through a bunch of Instagrammers that I found out about coaching, and I signed up for a lot of courses. Like I spent, oh God, like what, $5,000, $10,000 in coaching. I mean, I still invest in some coaching now, but it's not that amount. Like it's maybe like what, like 2,000, 3,000, maybe 4,000 in a whole year. Like that's, but this was like over a year plus that I spent that amount. And I really don't like that the coaching industry is unregulated. Like there's, oh my God, we have this one Asian colleague. I think you know who I'm talking about, Hien. Like this one person who purported themselves as a very trauma-informed person, yoga. Yeah, I see your face.
Decolonize, you know, they use words like decolonizing.
Yeah, it was just a whole mess. And they were someone that I like literally did a trade with. It was not a trade at all. It was totally unequal. And like that was one of the first times that I really was like, fuck, I'm like losing faith in this industry because like, what the hell? I just did $1,000+ of work for you that you didn't even take the advice from me, even though I know what I'm talking about. And I'm pretty fucking good at marketing because I was in marketing and public relations before I did coaching or sex work or any of these things. And like, she also exploited me for like my family trauma going on at the time, which was really, really like, yes, I like to talk about that, but on my own terms, not for someone else's like gain. Like that just feels to me. And that was like the turning point for me that I was like, fuck this shit. Like, this made me feel so demoralized. And even before that, I was like, I've been through a lot of coaching, but I felt like it was just selling me this dream that's not necessarily A, realistic, and B, like it shouldn't be a shame that someone has to take on a part-time job. Like that's just fucking capitalism that we live in. Like not everyone's gonna have 6 figures. Like I hated that too. And so I moved from that and still doing content creation because I found the most joy in content creation and not in just like coaching people. Because like what was I coaching people on? Like I don't even know what I was coaching people on. Like was I coaching them on to have their own business or like hold space as a healer? But like you can't necessarily like coach someone on how to like, that's a therapist's job. And like with my clients, sex work, whatever, I tell them to go to therapy if I know that they need therapy. I'll like slowly inch them towards it if they're like resistant to it, which does happen and has happened with one of my IRL sex work clients. But like they're also now like pursuing therapy and have done some work towards that. So like it's baby steps. But at the end of the day, coaching is just like, again, it's a lot of selling this fantasy. Again, not all coaches. There's some like wonderful coaches, like shout out to Toomey. They're awesome. They keep it real. But a lot of people, like, it's just this fantasy that you're selling, which again, also kind of ironically correlates to sex work because you're selling this persona and fantasy, but it's in a definitely much real way. Like, I know that I'm exchanging money for like an experience. And so I took some time away from the coaching industry, away from activism, because like I've also been involved in activism, and I realized that like work shouldn't drain me. Like, yes, I mean, work can drain you, given that it's capitalism, but like work that you're like passionate about and that's your like project, more or less, should be enjoyable for you to some extent. Like, yeah, you're gonna hate it like every other job, I'm sure, every now and then, but like it should be something that like lights you up. And like for me, coaching wasn't that. And then so I took some time away. I like was totally against it. I decided to not do like invest in any programs for a year until I like found programs that were aligned for me and like taken time to listen to my body. And then I realized that I really like cooking and really like it's in my blood because my family, both sides, owned restaurants when I was like a little kid. And so like I always grew up in that environment. And for a long time, I honestly looked down upon that type of work, which like feels weird to say now. But I think it was like an internalized classism thing. And I think there's a lot of internalized classism in the coaching industry. And so once I was able to like talk to my therapist, you know, have a few sessions with a healer, shout out Siobhan, she's the best. You should check out their page. It really helped me realize that what I need to do and like my medicine is talk about food, it's talk about sex, it's talk about all these things and also putting them together. And the sex work also, like that's something that I've been interested in on and off since I was like what, 20, 21 maybe. Like I've always been a very sexual person with a big sex drive. And it's something that I've enjoyed, and also getting paid for it is nice, right? Like no one's gonna not want to like not get paid for something that they enjoy. And so I also pursued peer support for sex work with my friend May, Multiverse of Mai. And that has helped me because they've been in the industry for a long time. So for like 8+ years or something like that. And yeah, it just, I guess with therapy and reflecting on life and journaling, I just came to this realization that this is what the path is meant to be for me specifically. And this is where I find the most joy in, and I can create my own hours, which is just lovely. Even with having a part-time job, I still get to create like what days I come in. And if I want to add more days, and if I need to like not have as many days during certain months because like it's going to be more sex work heavy, or it's going to be more food facilitation heavy. Like it's totally different every month. And that's what I love about all of this, that it's not a cookie cutter thing. Whereas with coaching, it was like, this is how to do it. This is cookie cutter. And I'm just like, no, cookie cutter does not work for me. I don't think it works for most people, to be honest. It's like saying that like one type of therapy works for everyone. Like, no, CBT is not going to work for everyone. That's just true.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And I will say, as someone who's followed you since like 2019, that you seem like the most you, like, and not to say that like you weren't being yourself before, but you just seem like the most you I've ever seen yet so far. And I can only imagine that you're going to be even like more you as you continue down this path, which I think is awesome. And Zara, I saw you like make a lot of facial expressions, so I feel like you might have something you want to add.
Yeah, I also will say I followed you for a while and I love your content, and it does feel very embodied. So I do want to, yes, pop on that train. But So you said so many brilliant things about the coaching industry that I relate to, experienced, reflected on. It's sort of like a minefield. It's such a wild experience to have done coaching and watched, like done coaching on the aspect of like hiring exorbitantly expensive coaches who provide you with nothing and gaslight you and tell you that it's actually your fault you're not succeeding. Um, and then also be on the other side of it where you're like, oh, I'm like supposed to be coaching people and guiding them. Like, also, what am I doing? Also, what are we all doing? Like, what is this industry doing? Like, where does this overlap with therapy and where should it not be overlapping in therapy? There's such a lack of insight. And I know you've been talking about it on your page a lot, and I just want to say I really appreciate it because this is content that is deeply needed within wellness spaces and is not being addressed at all whatsoever for the most part. And I was saying to Hien earlier this month that like I'm seeing so many people who weren't even necessarily in wellness before or never did coaching or have real like training in other things that are now like, I'm gonna be your holistic wellness coach. And it's like, what does that mean? And then, you know, you got to get a tagline, you got to get a what's your pain point? What are you selling to people? What are you marketing to people? The cookie cutterness of it is, it's such a specific formula. And to just see people continuing to pick it up still to this day, you know what I mean? Where it's like, we've been having these conversations in coaching for at least a couple of years now. I mean, in wellness, it's starting to happen. I mean, in our spaces, I would say on a larger scale, like I said, these are conversations that aren't really being had. But I was curious, as someone who's reflected on it, what do you see for the future of coaching? Like, what would you like to see done to it? Or how would you like to see it kind of shift? Or would you like to see it go away altogether? Because I personally am going through that process right now of like, what the fuck is coaching? Sorry about my language. I don't know if you're a cursor.
I curse. I'm a sailor's mouth, so it's fine.
Cool. Cool.
I guess ideally, I'm between burning it down and reforming it, but also like as an abolitionist, the burning it down in me is like, we should just burn it down and like start anew. I think I'm leaning more towards that because like you can't reform something that's already been like poisoned. Like it's like trying to reform like the prison system. Like, why would you reform that? Just burn it down.
Absolutely. I agree with this wholeheartedly on so many levels, where it is just like, it's based, I have said this before, I haven't really thought too much about it. Like coaching is to people what marketing is to products. And like the industry where you're like trying to optimize them, you're trying to like sell them on things, and like, what are you missing? What can we add to you? It feels very similar. Like, how can you market yourself in a new way, or how can you like get a new skill? I don't know. It's like neoliberalism all tied up together. It's pretty gross.
When actually, in reality, I think holding space is about relational work. Also, like I think you've had Denise on this podcast and they mentioned something that like that's the work that they do, and like I really also like believe in and align with that because like yeah, like honestly with sex work again, it's about making relationships. And like one of my clients is also a friend, and like another client found me through TikTok and like is talking about doing in person with me, and it's just like yeah, it's because I like actually take time to know them, and that's all it is to hold in space when you get time to know someone and also not dictate them. Because coaching, it's a lot of like, in a lot of coaching spaces, I've noticed that people like want to dictate what others are or who others are. But like, no, like I can only like give you guidance and maybe like nudge you a little bit and ask you questions. But like at the end of the day, it has to be your like figuring it out or like you're like owning it. And it can't just be like me saying like, oh yes, you're whatever. Like, no, that's not how that works.
Yeah, you know, with what I'm hearing both of you talk about, it really reminds me of how I feel like a lot of coaching, I feel like anytime you run up into an obstacle, they're little cookie cutter answers that, oh, it's your limiting beliefs. Like you have to fix your mindset, right? It's your mindset, it's your limiting beliefs. And I'm just like, actually, maybe it's like trauma that I should actually be talking to a therapist about and not you. Like that's like what comes into mind. Or like when I see like, you know, the clients of coaches who like, you know, I don't blame these people because they're in this system and they're like fed these sort of like the image or like the fantasy, as you said, where they believe like this is what would be helpful for them. So I don't really blame them for falling for it, but I'm just kind of, sometimes I see how coaches might respond to their clients and I'm just like, yikes, like you should be telling this person, and I'm glad you do this with your clients, of like maybe talk to a therapist, like this is beyond like my scope, which is like really scary because in coaching it's like people I feel like go out of their scope of practice quite a bit.
Like I will literally sit down with you and do a worksheet with you for you to find a therapist. Like I literally have that because I've helped like friends and other people like find therapists. So it's like, look, this is what I would do with a friend who needs a therapist. And I'm going to do the same with you in the next session that you book me for. This is what we're going to do.
I love that so much. I think that is so cool. And much appreciated. And so I'm just kind of curious right now, what is your favorite thing about what you're doing right now? Like as a chef, as a sex worker, like what right now is like, this is what I really like. This is what I'm really into doing as of late. Or this is what, you know, brings me joy. And I'm glad that I'm doing this.
So what brings me joy right now is like right now I'm working on experiential dinner experiences. And I think that's really unique because it brings the facilitation part. It brings the healing of sex work because sex workers are healers. And it also brings in the food part because I love to fucking cook food. And I'm collabing with Safe Slut in New York for a couple of things. We're gonna unveil them. But one of them is experiential dinner, and it will be around the menu, sex work, and food work, and how that all, you know, goes together in the conversation around that. Because I realized that movie has made more people talk about food work, the food industry, which is really fucked up in its own ways. And then it's made people talk about sex work and like legitimizes it and destigmatizes it. And also like the movie, in my opinion, is pro-sex work. And yeah, and I really want to have a conversation about that because there's so much that you can like align with food in front of house and how that is like very akin to sex work in some ways. And also people should follow the collectress. She's super cool. And she has there was a post on like sex workers as hospitality professionals. And I thought it was interesting as someone who's worked in food and specifically front of house, because there's a lot in front of house people take that, in my opinion, they should not take. Like, honestly, fire the shitty clients and like the clients who like actually like respect your workers. Those are the ones that you should keep. Because clients are not always right. Most of the time they aren't right. Sometimes they're right. But yeah, clients and customers isn't God. And that's also what I don't like about a lot of like the fine dining industry, that they think customers are God. And I'm just like, no, your customer could be fucking wrong. And you should fucking defend your employees. Because like, I remember when I was in fine dining, very small stint and did front of house, like the GM just let me and other front of house people get gaslit. And I'm just like, why? Like it was detrimental to my mental health. And so like, I don't know, that just needs to, there's so many things in the food industry that needs to change, but like the normalization of abuse definitely needs to change. Like, no, there's other ways for people to learn and it doesn't have to be through abuse. Because that's not mentorship, in my opinion. That's just getting someone down and doing like, no, that's just traumatizing someone. And that's not helpful when you want to learn.
Wow, that I agree with so much of what you said. Sorry if I interrupted you. The front of house work being equated to sex work. And I also think that you see this a lot. I mean, I guess I don't know from personal experience, obviously, but I would say comparatively, the idea, particularly in fine dining, that offering you money and tip and like tipping you well entitles me to treat you, not me personally, but that customer to treat you like an object or not a real person. Yeah, wow. Thank you so much for sharing. Sorry, I'm like, you can see me in real time.
Yeah, I can
thoughts
see
about
that
this.
you're like
Sorry.
thinking and like processing.
Yeah, you've said a lot of wonderful things that I'll be thinking about. And to be honest, I haven't seen the menu, but now I definitely will, because I'm like, I
You
heard
need
about
to.
it. Okay, I definitely will. I definitely will, like, sometime this week watch it. Because now I'm really intrigued, because I heard about like the movie, but like I just hadn't gotten around to it. So thank you for that. And so you mentioned a little bit, but we always ask people at the end of the interview, what's one thing you want to see more of in wellness, and what's one thing you want to see less of in wellness. And of course, this originally started as like a wellness podcast, and that our idea and definition of wellness has expanded. So yes, it definitely includes chefs and sex workers. So what are your thoughts?
So I want to see less of abuse, less of like the boys club. Like, I think that's bullshit. And I also love that I have a boss at my vanilla job who was like, yeah, that's totally bullshit. Like, fuck that shit. Fuck fine dining. Like, we should be focusing on feeding the people. And I'm like, yes, go you. And I also want to see less of like entitlement to people's bodies, people's times, and like fine dining especially, but also like it goes for like all work, not just sex work, not just food work, like devaluing people and devaluing workers as a whole. I don't want to see that. And I want to see more of paid wages that are fair, healthcare if you can offer it, paid parental leave, destigmatization of sex work and decriminalization of sex work, because it is valid. And it's like, not that I should have to like say that, but like it's more healing work than people think. Like, honestly, a lot of conversations I've had in sex work have been healing for me personally, in my experience, because it's taught me how to like have better boundaries with myself, and also like at the same time also like less of devaluation of workers, especially sex workers, massage parlor workers, migrant workers, back of house workers, especially with all like the classism and elitism around like, you need to go to culinary school. Like, fuck that. You don't need to go to culinary school. I'm personally not planning to go to culinary school as of now. Like, maybe if I want to like specialize in something, but like right now I'm like, nah, I don't want more student loans, to be honest. It's not worth it. And more of just respecting people and consent in every part of work, because like food work needs that too. And I think it could benefit from, you know, better policies around sexual and intimate partner violence and gaslighting, because that's just like, and also less of customers God, because customers are not God. Customers are just people that want an experience. And you can also say no to those people. Sex workers do it. A lot of sex workers do it. So why can't the food industry get on the same board?
Wow. Please say that again. Respect and consent. Like, I mean, it's kind of like a no duh. I mean, maybe like for us here in this little Zoom room, but gosh, out there in the world, I just wish more people like knew that that was a thing. And yes, in every industry, especially just in every service industry, it's very much customers is God. And it's very weird because it's very much not true. And it's very harmful for all workers to be told that. And so thank you so much for voicing that. And how can people get in touch with you?
So my Instagram is SexySoupDumplings. If you want to follow my OF and sub, it is SexySoupDumplings. Let me look at my S work Twitter because I have two different Twitters. I have my Safe for Work Twitter and then my S work Twitter. And my sex work Twitter is SexyDumplings. I'm currently rebuilding, like working on my website and having that refresh with my new branding. Yay, a rebrand. And it will be Sexy Soup Dumplings because my government name is no longer serving me in that way. So I'm breaking up with that domain name. It's no more. Also, I'm thinking where else? Oh, I got banned from TikTok, so people can't follow me there anymore. Otherwise, I would say TikTok. What's the other ones? Oh, and I'm doing wait, no, I'm not sure when this is airing, but I'm doing a workshop, or I'll have workshops, and you can follow that on my Instagram. And I'm phasing out one-on-one peer support for non-monogamy because I'm going to be doing more of that peer support in online and in-person sex work. So you're going to have to sub to my OnlyFans for that if you want that.
Thank you so much for being on our podcast and talking to us today. I really appreciate knowing you, basically just knowing you, and think about the many DMs we've exchanged, just talking about the shit we see on Instagram. And so I just want to thank you just for not just what you do for everyone and everything that you shared, but just for our personal friendship as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
So this is our post-interview talk about our conversation with Sexy Soup Dumplings. Lovely conversation. They've given me a lot to think about and appreciate. What were some of your reflections, Zara?
Okay, I absolutely love this interview. I love talking to Sexy Soup Dumplings. I think they're brilliant. And as we talked about in the beginning, they do get into the menu, and you guys heard our conversation about that. And one of the things that kind of came to me was the idea that, I mean, and we talk about this in the episode about how sex work and service workers, people who work in food, they get devalued as people a lot of the times in the work they do. And like, I think what Sexy Soup Dumplings does a lot with their work is try to bring that value back to the person and the personhood back to the person, whether it's like involved with food or sex or whatever it is. And I do think we don't explicitly touch on this, but the menu is such a good, and this whole conversation is just a reminder of the way capitalism devalues us as humans and takes our humanity away, right? Because we just wind up being like, well, I'm the customer, this is my experience, this is my serve, I'm supposed to be getting this thing. And it's like, okay, well, those are also people who are involved in your process. And if you have to like throw money at a thing and feel like that you don't have to treat people like people, which is, spoiler alert, what's going on in every American corporation across the country. They don't even necessarily have to be American corporations, but we know what I'm talking about. So yeah, I think that was really interesting. I really liked how, I know this is in the post interview, which is available in our Substack. Listen to our Substack. It's really great over there. We got some good interviews. We have some good bonus content. We talk about like hopes for 2023. And I do feel like labor rights is a thing that keeps coming out to me, specifically around a lot of the stuff that Sexy Soup Dumplings does for work and was talking about content wise. So yeah. Oh, okay. This is the point I made. Sorry, I write notes during interviews, everyone listening, and my handwriting when I'm writing fast, not great. And it's also mixed into my grocery list. So it just says rotisserie chicken in the middle of my thoughts. Anyways, but one thing I do see is like, I think what we don't talk about in the episode, but is a point that I kind of wanted to make, is that I think sex workers and food workers, like service workers and even essential workers, teachers, nurses, they are the canaries in the coal mine who are screaming, things are about to get real bad, and I think a lot of people aren't listening to them. So those are just some of my reflections coming off of the episode. Did you have any reflections you wanted to share, or anything you wanted to elaborate on what I said? Because I said 9,000 mouthfuls.
I love what you shared. And yeah, I think that what you are saying about people in the service industry being like dehumanized and devalued is something that is a reality I have felt and I've seen. And also what really sucks is just like how also as like a quote consumer or customer that I've also sort of been conditioned to also feel like that's okay. Like if I'm, and not like I go out of my way to like treat people bad, but it's like, oh, if I'm a paying customer, then like fuck them, right? Like they just gotta give me what I want when I want it, how I want it. And it like made me think of something. So I was in Vegas earlier this month for like a family trip for my cousin's 21st birthday. We had a good time. It was fun. But it was so interesting because I had this Uber driver, and thinking about just like service workers, I hope I'm not like going like way too far out of like what we started with. But he was so interesting because one of the first things I noticed, because they put on their profile like how many stars they had. This guy had like 5 stars, and I usually give all my drivers 5 stars anyways, but he had 5 stars. I was like, okay, cool, he's probably gonna be great. And it's so interesting because he was like so polite, and one of the and like really went above and beyond, and like really showed it. And what's interesting is he was asking us where we wanted to be dropped off, even though I had set the drop off point to be like where the like rideshare drivers would pick you up at the hotel I was staying. And I did that because I knew that would be like easiest for them, because some of the apps, either Lyft or Uber, I forgot which one, but like they'll have you choose, like even if it's the same hotel, like where your drop off point is. And I said to him, I said, oh, I think even if they give me the option to go to a different place, I picked the one that I think would be easiest for the drivers. And he was saying like, yeah, I understand that, but I try to look at it from a customer service lens, since you're the ones who are paying us for like the service. And so like he was basically offering that he could drop us off somewhere a bit more convenient for us. And I was like, oh yeah, that's interesting, and thank you. And so we did go to a different drop-off point, even though personally for me, it wouldn't have mattered. Like honestly, for me, it would not have mattered either way. And I didn't say this to him, but I wanted to say like, you know what? I also work in the service industry. And because of that, I want to make it easier for you. I didn't say that for some reason. I think it's because I was with my mom and just would have felt weird. But I think if I was just with him, I would have said, but I actually want to make it easier for you because I know you are like working really hard out here. And so anyways, I gave him a good tip and all, but I always give people good tips, not like I don't. Of course, give him a 5-star, which he continues to have, I'm sure, to this day. But I don't know, there's just something really interesting about how I think we're kind of conditioned to like see that, like someone who goes above and beyond. SexySoupDumplings says that the customer is not God. And I feel like that's a line I'm gonna like be using to myself when I'm like, working with customers or being in service. And even for myself when I'm a customer, that's like, I'm not God. Like I'm just a person and this is another person. So yeah, I just wanted to share that. I don't know. Did that make sense, Zara?
Yeah, that made so much sense. And I think that's really interesting because this is something I was going to mention to you personally. And it's like the same idea, but a different story. Like, I recently was with a family member and they were talking about going out to a restaurant or whatever. And they were like, oh, the server, she was so nice. And, it's not like this person is a bad tipper or would ever give anyone a bad tip, but they were like, oh, she was just so good. I gave her an extra tip because I said, this is how you're supposed to do your job. And to which I said to them, which caused, we'll say, an uncomfortable conversation for all of us, but I am not one to back down from an uncomfortable conversation, where I mentioned, like, you don't know what that person is experiencing. Like, yeah, it's nice that they're willing to give you or able to give you that, but like maybe their dad died this morning, maybe they had a shitty day for work, maybe they don't know how they're going to pay their rent, like there are 9 million things that we as a customer don't think of because of the idea that is ingrained to us, which is like Sexy Soup Dumplings was talking about, like the client is God or the client isn't God. You know what I mean? Like we're not gods when we go to places, but we think we are. And then like we want to tie our own benevolence to it, like when we tip people well, and it's like, no, people should be tipped well because they're doing a job. Like first and foremost, tipping culture has a lot tied to it that I don't think we have time to get into. But yeah, I do think it is interesting how you're someone who's considerate of it and you're aware of it, but it's like so deeply ingrained in everyone. You know what I mean? Like if you're undoing it or not. I don't know if that made sense, but like,
Yeah.
I do. Yeah, I think it's interesting. Sorry, my dog is like really being needy down here.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And so I guess like Sexy Soup Dumplings probably didn't intend this, but now I'm thinking about, yes, customer is not God. And that includes me then when I am a customer. So that's really interesting. And then I would say the other reflection I'm thinking about from our conversation with them is on, they talk a little bit more about this in the bonus episodes. I'm going to go ahead and plug that again. You can listen a little bit more. But they were talking about how they are working in a way where the structures are like horizontal and not just that top down or vertical, and how that is like, I don't know, sort of like a culture shift that they are. What I'm sensing is they're a part of that culture shift, but also they desire to see more of that culture shift in like all industries, but of course in like fine dining and food as well as in sex work. And I thought that was really interesting because I yearn for that. Like I feel like I'm always about not the top down, but the bottom up, about the horizontal structures. And so it's just nice to hear someone like reiterate some of the things like I already know and think about, but then like, in their own words and in their field, because I'm just like, don't we all want that? Or like, don't we all need that desperately right now? And I mean, that's why people are out like trying to unionize and strike and stuff.
Solidarity forever. Yeah, and I agree with that idea where it is like, it was really nice to hear Sexy Soup Dumplings talk about the horizontalness and as well as like the relational part of what it means to work with someone, right? It's not just like a transaction. And I think like with hierarchy, it becomes a transaction. Someone above you gives something to someone below them. You know what I mean? Someone below them gives something to someone above them, versus when it's horizontal, it's more of an exchange, right? And that makes me, and the whole relational aspect of it made me wonder something. Influence, like coaching is a big nightmare experience. We talk about it more on the episode. But I think about how influencers, I wonder the level to which the reason so many influencers became big was because you feel like you're developing a relationship, right? Parasocial relationships. And then a lot of those influencers did some level of like coaching or marketing or work with me or join this group or whatever. And it is that disgusting level of hierarchy where you feel, and parasocialness, where you feel like there's a relationship, you feel like there's a connection, you feel like you know them, so you can give them an exorbitant amount of money to treat you or coach you or fix you or heal you, or all of those words that you legally probably shouldn't even be allowed to say surrounding the work that you do.
Yeah, I remember. So Sexy Soup Dumplings really was really vocal about their own experiences and thoughts on the coaching industry. And I think what's interesting is they use a term like how there's like a lot of like cookie cutter like answers, or like there's like a cookie cutterness to like how coaches do things and how they treat their like clients. And I feel like, well, first of all, I feel like I freaking hate that. But also I do find it interesting because again, now I'm thinking about myself as like not the person who's doing the influencing, but the person who's being influenced. Do I maybe sometimes like that? Or is there a part of me that's been conditioned to want like maybe some of the more cookie cutter answers, right? Because like, for instance, it's really easy to say like, or to think my problems will be solved if I just pay this woman, this white woman, a bunch of money so she can tell me I have limiting beliefs and that I'm in my own way. And if I just do steps 1, 2, 3 that she laid out in her program, that I will be healed or fixed. Like, is there a part of our own, just how we structure our society, that makes us feel like even if not consciously, like it's comforting to have maybe a cookie cutter answer?
Yeah, that's capitalism, right? That's capitalism, that's marketing. It's white supremacy. This is the 12-step plan. Be white, get money, have your own servant wife bang maid therapist. You know what I mean? Like, that's the American dream, baby. Hopefully not the real American dream, but it is like that idea that you have to, like, there's a direct step and a direct line of ways to do things. And if you aren't doing them, then you're wrong. And it's like, we know that that's not true. And it's like the idea of decolonization, where it's like, even you see a lot of these coaches out here who are like, join my decolonization program, follow these 5 easy steps. And you're like, is it decolonization if it's still steps? Because I think it's undoing the structures. And one of the things we're all really tied to is having a direct answer. And I think that's why coaching is such an insidious and saturated industry, because everyone wants this. You want a 5-step solution. That's gonna, I would love to believe that the reason I'm struggling is because I'm not doing enough affirmations every day versus
you didn't do step 3. You can't skip step 3. There's always a coach who gives you the homework and says, like, don't forget to do your journaling prompts.
And then if you didn't do your journaling prompts, see, this is why you're not succeeding. And it's like, I don't know, man, you're like a white lady living on like a beach in Hawaii, and this person you're telling this to could be trying to keep a roof over their head, struggling with a physical mental disability, like having a sick family member. There are millions of things that are standing in the way of you not succeeding. And it generally isn't because you're lazy and not trying hard enough and don't believe in yourself. I mean, those are all factors we all experience because capitalism has broken each of us in a special way. But yeah, I agree. There's not, it would be nice if there were a system. And I think that's why people want to believe in coaching. That is a thing I still struggle with, of wanting to believe in coaching for, because like, yeah, there is a way to help people, but it's like, I don't know, man, it's all feeling like bullshit.
Yeah. And I love when you ask Sexy Soup Dumplings whether they're more about reforming or like burning it all down, and they're like, I'm in between, but I'm an abolitionist, so like, fuck it, burn it all down. And I also kind of feel I'm in between, but I also just feel like coaching and just anything in the world that you're going to do, I think the more, this is what I would say in my experience, the more like precise or specific the issue, the better it will be. So I feel like coaching is helpful if you're like, this is the one problem I want help with. And like, this is the one person who, and not like the one person, like cookie cutter, only this person can save you, but like, this is a person who has the skills and experience who could help me solve this like one issue. But the problem I see is like, I guess because of capitalism and coaches wanting to be experts of all kinds of stuff, is that they're all trying to be experts of like everything. So like a life coach or a mindset coach or a business coach, even those 3 words can get blurred. Like when I have seen mindset coaches say like, oh, I coach like entrepreneurs and business owners, but like, you don't have to be one to be my client. But then it's like, but wait, then how are you going to actually help that person if they're coming to you because they are wanting help with something specific as like an entrepreneur business owner? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like they're trying to solve everything because that's like their marketing, I guess, that because they have the cookie cutter answers to give you.
Sorry, this just gave me a big flashback and I think it was 2018. I paid at the time a fancy fabulous coach to do one of her programs or whatever. and I was trying to figure out how to integrate like Enneagram coaching, like intrapersonal work, like coaching. And she had formerly been like you pick one area. You're either going to teach people how to lose weight, you're going to teach people how to find love, or you're going to teach people to get more money, whatever. Those are your three things. And then when I took her course, she was like, why is this? Obviously, it was my fault because mindset, but she was basically like, there was like a why is this girl not thriving situation. And the next round, she offered her coaching to be more quote unquote inclusive in the sense that she was like, yeah, and life coaches, we'll figure out how to market you. So basically, like, if you don't have a niche, we'll figure out how to market you. Like, where I didn't feel like she helped me figure out a niche. She basically was like, no, you just need to pick a pain point and market it to people. I don't know. It was just like very weird, where it is like such a thing where they want to put you in a box, but at the same time, you can't be in that box because you also need to be all of these other things.
Right.
Like you need to help them find all of the things. And it's like, I don't know, one person's not going to solve all your problems.
Right. Because, I often think about what some of the coaches put out there. And then when I hear about people not having good experiences with coaching, whether it's from the coach's perspective or the client, I'm just thinking like, okay, well, it just sounds like you weren't a good fit. But for some reason, your coach didn't want to be honest with you and say, like, actually, I can't help you. Like, maybe you need a therapist, or like, I can't help you. Maybe you need an accountant, if you're thinking about like financial stuff, or maybe you need someone who is an expert on, this operations or this other aspect of business to help you thrive. And so that's what I mean by like specific / precise problems / pain points. But it's like you said, it's like, but they want to be, they want to do everything and be everything because everyone else is competition, right? Like, that's capitalism.
Yeah. Well, and the thing, and like, this is something I was talking to someone recently about, where it's like, there's this idea. Okay, actually, gosh, these are now two different things. One was I was listening to a TikTok earlier today and someone was reading from a book. I wish I knew the book. I wish I remembered the creator. It's been a long day. But it was like, when people think about food, right, there's a satiated point. There's a point where you're like, oh, I'm full, I don't need more, And other things in life, there is a fullness point. But why does that not apply to like the business realm, where it's like you just have to keep expanding forever? And that's where coaching becomes dangerous, because no coach can sustain that like business model while still developing real relational dynamics that incorporate some level of horizontal structure versus like a hierarchical structure.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. There's so much I could say about that. Just my own experiences as well. But I just want to say, absolutely agree with that. And I just really appreciate Sexy Soup Dumplings and what they are doing, and just so that people know, because a lot of what they talk about is like what's possible besides, that hierarchical, vertical way of doing things, is to be in spaces and situations and to even do your own like entrepreneurial and creative pursuits in a horizontal way. And I just think that's like a really important thing. And so, yeah. Do you have any other thoughts, Zara?
No, I think Sexy Soup Dumplings gave us so much beautiful insight, material, and conversation, and sparked a lot of really interesting conversation between us in this post interview. And yeah, I'm just so grateful. And of course, there's so much to say always, but yeah, I think this was a great episode, a great conversation. And thank you for being here with me, Hien, for our first interview of the year.
Of course, Zara. And thank you to our listeners. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to the Thoughtful Wellness Revolution podcast. For bonus content, you can go to thoughtfulwellnessrevolution.substack.com and subscribe for $5 a month. You can also follow us on Instagram at Thoughtful Wellness Revolution to share your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe to us wherever you're listening.